At first glance, it may seem that Japan and South Korea are very similar. They are close to each other, they have common historical roots, and both countries amaze the whole world with their technology. But having visited both, I now have my own experience. I have concluded that in many ways these countries are very similar, and in some ways, they are radically different. Some things even shocked me. Friends, hi, we're here with Holly Lolly. Today, let's discuss together what Japan is better at than Korea and vice versa. And I want to emphasize that this is my personal experience. You, of course, may have your own experience, which may coincide with my opinion or may differ. Friends, if you have been to both Japan and Korea, please share your opinion in the comments. You know, I have singled out some points for myself by which I compare these two countries, and I will share my opinions with you, explaining why I think so and not otherwise. First of all, when you come to Japan or Korea, you will face a problem: where to throw garbage. Where do the Japanese throw it? Where do the Koreans throw it? I've lived in Japan for a long time, and I've been to Korea as a tourist. In Japan, you have to get used to sorting waste into 5, 6, or even 10 categories. The maximum number of bags I sorted my trash into was 9. The number of bags depends on the neighborhood you live in. Sometimes it's not just paper and plastic, but, for example, paper with film and paper without film. For instance, if it's a cardboard package from some delivery, then you need to make sure to peel off the tape, fold the box properly, cut it in the right places, and wrap it with paper tape. Furthermore, in Japan, there are also categories such as aluminum, green glass, transparent glass, and so on. Tetra packs and packages that have food remnants need to be washed, dried, and only then thrown away. The same goes for plastic bottles, their caps are discarded separately. You peel off the label and throw it into other garbage, burnable. The plastic bottle itself must be flattened, made small, and thrown away separately. Furniture cannot just be taken out and left. For example, on the street near a container. It has to be taken out separately and for a fee. You have to buy a special paid sticker, which you stick on the item. It indicates that you have paid for the removal of this or that garbage. On a specific day, a vehicle will come to pick up and dispose of your furniture. In case of improper sorting, the administration can send you a reminder about how to sort garbage. By the way, I don't know what we did wrong, but one day they sent us such an alert, stating that there was going to be a house-wide meeting and asking us to attend a lecture on how to dispose of trash. Although we seem to do everything by the book, you stand there, reread, compare everything, we still received this notice. We travel a lot, and when we arrived, we saw the notification with the date already passed. We didn't miss the meeting on purpose. We just weren't there when it happened. Unfortunately, we couldn't attend. However, we didn't receive any more notifications after that. We carefully reread all the instructions on how to sort garbage properly. Again, this is our experience. For example, if you have some wrappers or empty bottles in your hands while walking in Japan, you will carry them with you until you find a store or until you get home because there are no trash cans on the streets. To me, this is a major inconvenience. Let me explain why. I very often go to tourist spots, for example, to film some street food, and very often, I don't like it. I will say from my experience that what is heavily hyped and shown in all the TikToks is usually not tasty. Again, maybe it's just my personal taste, but I don't like it. I make a commercial, show what it is, take a bite, and I don't eat it again, and it has to go somewhere else. It's kind of rare when you really like it and want to finish it. But even if it's delicious, and I have to make 5 videos with some other food, I can't physically eat it all, so I have to dispose of it somewhere. You need a bag where you dump it all, and then you try to cram it into your backpack. And in your backpack, you have, for example, a tripod and a phone. It's inconvenient, and you often need to use navigation because you need to know where to go. In many places, I already know my way around, but often you still need to use navigation. And at the same time, you look for garbage cans that are not there. You know, but who would have thought that in South Korea, it would be even more complicated? I heard that waste is usually sorted into 3 bags, and usually, there are no difficulties. But I didn't stay for a very long period as a tourist, and I specifically didn't live for an extended period in this country to tell you directly in detail, so I researched this issue from many sources to tell you and not to mislead you. In Seoul, I lived in a hotel, so I had no problems with sorting trash at all. In Japan, we once stayed in a hotel for 2 months too. Of course, the hotel staff was shocked when we arrived and asked to be checked into the hotel. We had just paid for 2 months in advance, and they signed us in for 2 months. But that's probably a separate story for another video. So in Japan, I didn't have any problems with sorting trash at first either because the hotel took care of that for us. Also, in Seoul, when we arrived, we lived in the hotel as tourists and threw everything in one bag, and it was a great relief. It's also worth noting that a big advantage in Korea is that you can much more often find trash cans where you can throw your trash. Of course, there are not as many of them as in our country, but even, for example, in the subway, I saw small trash cans where you can just throw something away. In Japan, you can only do that in stores or carry it home. There are also a few general categories. I studied this question, asked acquaintances whether it is true or not, and now I share this information with you. They separate food waste, recyclables, non-recyclables, and bulky items. But beyond that, there are a huge number of other subcategories of trash, and I probably don't even know about all of them. This is where throwing trash in specialized bags comes in. If you throw your trash in an ordinary black bag, for example, you will be fined, and the trash may not be picked up. Trash bags are specific to each neighborhood, so you cannot use, for example, another neighborhood's trash bag in your area. The bags also vary in colors. For example, food waste bags have to be bought separately, and they will be a different color. Not only is it difficult to sort the waste properly, but you also have to fuss over almost every item to dispose of it correctly. For example, newspapers must be dry and necessarily flat. Advertising flyers or any plastic embedded in pages, like bookmarks, should definitely be separated and placed in a separate category. Covers or any spiral bindings from books and notebooks should be removed and put in the correct category. Boxes and cardboard should also be stripped of tape, any stickers, ribbons, or labels. Boxes and paper cups cannot just be taken, crumpled up, and thrown away. They must be flat, level, and folded according to the instructions. Yes, in Japanese boxes, I've always seen how to fold them correctly to achieve the right design for disposal. In Korea, I didn't look that closely, but I also saw that there are marks and arrows to guide how to properly dispose of this type of garbage. You can't throw away a clear plastic bottle, plastic packaging, and a plastic detergent bottle in one bag. These are 3 different subcategories of trash. For example, food that you haven't finished eating should be thrown away in a separate bag without packaging. For example, if you ate ramen, you should, of course, wash the packaging, throw it away separately, and put the leftovers in a food waste bag too. Don't forget that in both Japan and Korea, you can't throw away your garbage at any time. It is taken out on a schedule on certain days, so the bag with all this good stuff, with food waste, must be stored in your apartment until that long-awaited day when you can finally take it to the place where the garbage truck will come and take it away. And yes, by the way, I remembered such a moment in Korea that gave me sincere shock and surprise. In their containers for food waste, you cannot throw out the contents along with the bag. Imagine that your waste, which you've dumped in there, has been sitting for days. It's already rotten, sour, and you need to throw it all away without the bag. You come, unzip the bag, pour it all in there, enjoy the aromas, and take this bag with you to throw it away separately. So, it was a real shock to me. I learned that the fine for improper sorting ranges from $30 to $350. So keep in mind, if you're going to be in Korea, for example, not in a hotel but renting an apartment somewhere, remember that you have to be careful about how you throw away your trash and whether you're doing it correctly. Many people say that Japanese people are so thin because of the way they eat. It's believed that Japanese food, unless, of course, you eat too much, will keep you from getting fat. Well, I slightly disagree with this opinion, but I can't deny that in Tokyo, there is a huge variety of restaurants and cafes for every taste and budget. Here you can find both unreal Instagrammable tourist cafes and cozy family restaurants with affordable prices. The best part is that in Tokyo, there are establishments for locals, without bright signs and advertising. There, the food is really delicious, atmospheric, and very hearty. It's the kind of place you want to come back to again and again. And perhaps I should explain why I said that I slightly disagree with the opinion that Japanese food does not make you fat. Because I think it's all about genetics. That's just the way it is. I'm always watching them eat such large portions of rice, and there's a lot of other food, but I want to emphasize rice because they eat it like we eat bread. They eat rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they are all thin and slim. I don't eat rice at all. And now I'll tell you more about the Korean experience. But in Korea, I must be honest, I gained about 5 kilograms while I was there, and now I'm on a diet to somehow lose it because I'm uncomfortable. And our relatives, who came to Japan about 6 months ago, stayed for about 2 weeks, and they also said that they gained 5 kilograms because everything is so tasty, you want to try everything, and you really grow like on yeast. So I think it's genetics because they can eat a lot of things and somehow not gain weight, but we put it all on our sides. And another thing that I think is that I like Japanese cooking from other cuisines around the world. Like, for me, they have better Indian curry, the way they make it. Or, for example, quesadillas are very good. When I came to Japan after Korea, I was just enthralled by that flavor again. Honestly, I'm sure you won't see this in the homeland of quesadillas. And the Japanese do Italian food divinely, too, like spaghetti. It's usually just spaghetti, delicious sausage, and it's all in ketchup. And it doesn't look that good at first glance. It just looks like spaghetti, sausage, and ketchup. But really, it's incredibly delicious. But purely Japanese food, just considering my taste preferences, well, it's an acquired taste and very specific. I can't eat purely Japanese food. Well, somehow, it is not quite to my taste. It doesn't quite suit me. Even though I live in Japan, I still can't fully embrace the flavor 100%. But when the Japanese cook other cuisines of the world, it is simply divine. My experience with food in Seoul, on the other hand, was very different. Finding something to eat was just the hardest thing I've ever done. Almost everything we tried was just so spicy it was unbelievable. Even if you order a dish labeled not spicy, it's still so spicy that you just can't eat it, with tears in your eyes. It's especially noticeable in traditional Korean establishments, and it's not so easy with food delivery either. Services work in Korean, and even if you use a translator, it also gives some incorrect results. In the end, you had to search for a long time, translate the menu manually, but the food was still, in 90 to 95% of cases, so spicy that it could not be eaten. By the way, another minus I noted is that in Japan, you can eat 24/7, but in Korea, they have the Korean siesta. This is when most places are closed from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and you can eat in cafes and restaurants. Also, most places open at 11 a.m. Before that time, you either cook something yourself or buy ready meals in the supermarket. And I couldn't find almost anything from ready meals. Yes, there is a choice, but it's very sparse, especially compared to Japan. I would say that if I had come to Korea for the first time and not to Japan, I would have been madly surprised at how many cool things there are. But after Japan, it's like a little bit of a step backward because there's no such variety, and the food was bad for me. You will say, why did you gain so many kilograms if there was nothing to eat? Well, the Russian-Mongolian neighborhood in Seoul was a real lifesaver for us. Why Russian-Mongolian? It is considered to be a Russian quarter, but mostly only Mongolians work there, and there are a lot of inscriptions in the Mongolian language, so many people call it the Russian-Mongolian district. And there you could buy our usual food or dishes that don't burn your mouth. So we ate dumplings, and it's all with dough. And just like that, we were gaining. If in Japan, when you try something new, you discover some flavor palette and it's interesting, in Korea, if you can't take spicy food, it's a problem. Some 10 years ago, I was in Hong Kong, and I was so impressed by these beauties, but at the same time, it was so deplorable because we ate at McDonald's with my husband since we couldn't eat anything. The food was insanely spicy, and there was no salt. Imagine what your favorite dish is, and they put a lot of red pepper in it, and the salt was removed altogether. And that's the problem we encountered in Korea. By the way, we watched different bloggers to see what they eat there, but we couldn't eat it. We thought every time that we had ordered something wrong, tasted something wrong, but somehow it didn't work out for us with food in South Korea, unfortunately. And if I've touched on the topic of food, it's probably right to talk about deliveries, for example, of the same food and compare them in Japan and Korea. When I'm preparing for a video, I need to read some information because I have one opinion, and I need to familiarize myself with another and study a lot of sources, which I always double-check many times before I come to you and tell you something. And here I found information in many sources that in Japan, you order delivery, and you can wait a little longer, but you will get your food in perfect condition, very neatly arranged in beautiful boxes. The Japanese are perfectionists, it's really true. The courier can spend an extra 5 minutes to check if everything is as it should be. But in South Korea, it's the opposite. Speed is the most important thing. Here you can order kimchi, ramen, and it will be delivered in 15 to 20 minutes. That's what the internet says. Couriers on their motorcycles rush just to deliver food faster and fulfill more orders. But my opinion is radically different. Why? Let me explain. In Japan, we ordered and still order a lot of items every day because we have a very tight schedule. We cook, but we don't cook enough. I've already told you this in more than one video, and that's why very often our salvation is ordering food. In Japan, for example, the same quesadilla, you order it, the place opens at 11 a.m., and at 11:15 I already have a courier on my doorstep. He doesn't even call, He leaves the food and walks away. And just 15 minutes later, I already have an order at the door, and there's no situation where the courier spills everything. Everything is very neat. When they say that Japanese couriers always bring everything in perfect form, I absolutely agree. The same with pizza. We've ordered pizza in different countries, and very often it came to us sideways and messy. By the way, in South Korea, we ordered pizza, and some couriers brought it in good shape, while others delivered it with half of the pizza slid to one side. And let's compare pizza. In Japan, I order pizza from Domino's, and in about 20 to 25 minutes, they deliver it to you. But in Korea, it wasn't Domino's, it was some other pizzeria. And it took us an hour and 20 minutes, even though the website said 50 to 60 minutes. Of course, in 2 weeks, I didn't have time to reorder food from all the restaurants and conduct a global study. But I'm telling you about the items I ordered, and I'm comparing almost identical items. In my observation, Japanese delivery is much faster than in Korea. I don't know why this is the case. Maybe I was ordering from the wrong restaurants. I decided to share both what others are saying and what I personally encountered. For me, delivery in Japan is much faster than in Seoul. However, many people say otherwise. I don't know, maybe they're comparing it with their home countries and believe Seoul has incredibly fast delivery. Maybe that's true, but when comparing Japan and Korea, for me, Japan wins in delivery speed. You know, South Korea could easily be called a pop culture breakthrough. The country has entered the global market and has fans in just about every country thanks to music, idols, and dramas. Well, and let's be honest, in this respect, Koreans have greatly overtaken the Japanese. K-pop is now at the top of world charts, its fans are in almost every country, and these groups' concerts gather millions of spectators. As for dramas, Korean series have also become incredibly popular all over the world. And you know, here I even want to share something from my experience. I'm a screenwriter by profession, I write scripts, and, of course, I often have to find inspiration from different plots in movies and TV series. And I thought it was time to watch these Korean dramas. Maybe there's something interesting, a plotline I could remake or use. And honestly, just because it could help me in my work, I decided to give it a try, even though I had no real desire to watch them. But over time, I actually got a little hooked. In my mind, they were just love soap operas with hackneyed plots, about 20 or even 30 episodes, all about love and nothing else. Yes, of course, there are school offshoots, school love, crying, tears, but there are also insanely interesting detective stories, intricate plots, mysticism, and fantasy. Honestly, when I have some free time, I now enjoy watching Korean dramas because they became a kind of discovery for me. I didn't expect how cool they could be. Before, I guess I had a stereotype that they were just soap operas and not worth my time. So, truly, I think Koreans have made a huge breakthrough in this area. And of course, if Korea is the king of pop culture, idols, and dramas, then Japan undoubtedly holds the first place in the world of animation. It's a massive universe that captivates millions of people worldwide. Now there are more than 13,000 anime series and movies, with legends like Death Note, Naruto, Attack on Titan, and others being watched and discussed for decades. By the way, recommend your favorite anime or drama in the comments, I'll be insanely grateful, and I think other subscribers and viewers will want to watch them too. In terms of the geographical location of the country, there are risks in both Japan and South Korea, but they are completely different. Japan is located at the intersection of 4 tectonic plates, while South Korea is relatively far from plate collisions. Japan records thousands of earthquakes every year, and some of them, unfortunately, are quite large and can be fatal. The last significant one was just recently, on January 1st, 2024, with a magnitude of 7.6. These are the kinds of earthquakes that are widely reported and recorded due to destruction and casualties. Well, literally, I don't know. Conditionally speaking, about 10 days ago, there was probably an earthquake of magnitude 5, and this happens quite often. Yes, local news reports cover it, but even people don't pay much attention to such events. In South Korea, earthquakes are much rarer. Usually, weak tremors are recorded, with magnitudes ranging from 2 to 4, and strong earthquakes are extremely rare. One of the most famous was in 2016, with a magnitude of 5.8. But South Korea faces a different risk, the threat from North Korea. South Koreans regularly participate in drills in case of an attack. Evacuation drills take place in schools and businesses. Seoul and other cities have underground shelters. All subway stations have detailed instructions on what to do in case of an emergency, including a North Korean attack. In Seoul, literally at every subway station, every 2 to 3 meters, there are rescue kits containing everything you might need in an emergency. They include gas masks, masks against chemical contamination, flashlights, water supplies, and various medicines that may be needed. You know, you quickly get used to good things, and it is very difficult not to get used to them when talking about Japanese public toilets. In Japan, they are literally everywhere, free, clean, with plenty of toilet paper, multiple functions, various buttons, tables for swaddling, and a child seat for children under 3 years old. Every stall has one, and there are women's comfortable areas with mirrors. Even in the busiest neighborhoods, the toilets are still in perfect condition, which is truly surprising. In South Korea, you can feel the difference immediately. As nice as it is to have restrooms, they're not as easy to find as they are in Japan. In Japan, no matter where you go, you'll find them everywhere. In Korea, they're somehow hidden, not everywhere, and much rarer than in Japan. They are, frankly, not as clean as in Japan, and they have regular toilets, not these multifunctional Japanese ones with lots of buttons. In Korea, I haven't seen a single street toilet with those advanced buttons. There are regular toilets or even just a hole in the floor. However, there is toilet paper, and there are some conveniences for moms. The toilets in Korea mostly look decent, but sometimes there are stalls on the street that, to put it mildly, resemble those at old gas stations in our countries. Emergency buttons, in case someone feels ill, are present in both countries. If someone feels unwell, you will find these buttons in both Japan and South Korea. You can call an employee for help, and assistance will arrive quickly. In South Korea, winters can be quite cold, especially in the north. In Seoul, for example, the temperature often drops to -5 or even 10. I've even heard from other people that it can reach -15 in January. It snows more often here than in Tokyo, but still not as often as in many other countries, and it melts quite quickly. And winter in Tokyo is very comfortable. The temperature rarely drops below 0, and if you are a fan of snow, it is extremely rare in the capital of Japan. In almost 3 years of living in Japan, I saw real snow once. Once there was wet snow, but it just did not reach the ground and melted. Last year, in February or March, it snowed, and in one day, 10 centimeters of precipitation fell, which for Tokyo is critically high. We even managed to make a tiny little snowman, you know. It was such a childish joy. So, for those who are looking for more comfortable winters without severe cold, Tokyo wins out. For example, the temperature in November in Tokyo can be around 17 or even 20 degrees. This year, it was 20 to 22 degrees in the final days of November. And then there was a sudden drop. It became sharply cold, just like winter. In Seoul at this time, people are already wearing winter jackets, and there is a much stronger contrast compared to Japan. If in Korea we had already put on warm jackets, when we arrived in Tokyo, we immediately took them off and, roughly speaking, wore sweaters, and it was very comfortable. Let's talk about heating. Of course, despite the fact that Tokyo has quite warm winters, it is still quite cold in Japanese houses. For example, in winter, it is about +5 degrees on average, but there is often such a strong wind that it feels much colder than +5 degrees. The only way to heat a room is with local heaters. Most often, air conditioners are used. By the way, because of this, electricity bills are very high. Radiators or gas heaters are also used. There is also a more traditional Japanese way, a special low table with a heater underneath and a blanket that covers your feet. Japanese houses do not retain heat well because of their very thin walls. So you end up sitting in a warm room with a heater, but if you go into another room, it can be freezing, literally like outside. We always feel this contrast when going to the bathroom, for example. It feels just like winter. It's very cold because the room is not heated. I get the impression that it's like visiting someone in a village where the toilet is outside. For me, heating always creates a sense of coziness, a warm nest. Without heating, combined with Japan's very high humidity and dampness, it can be uncomfortable. Sometimes clothes don't smell very nice, and no matter how often you wash them, the dampness persists. When you first arrive in Japan, you immediately notice that no matter how much you care for your belongings in winter, unfortunately, the dampness is always there. If you compare Japan and Korea, most houses in Korea have a floor heating system, which has been used historically for hundreds of years. It's powered by hot water running through pipes under the floor. Of course, winter heating bills can be quite high. But this is logical because winters in Korea are colder. In Japan, it's warmer, so naturally, Korea relies on floor heating. If it's -10 or -15 outside and there's no heating, you could easily freeze. If we talk about society and compare Japanese and Koreans, the Japanese are calmer, quieter, and almost never initiate conversations with foreigners. Even when they are drunk, they still behave quietly. Koreans, on the other hand, are not as reserved. They show more attention to foreigners. Seoul is noisier, with louder talking and louder laughing than in Japan. The subway is also much noisier than in Tokyo. Even though talking on the phone is not allowed in the subway in either city, the Seoul subway still feels livelier and noisier, while the Japanese subway is very crowded but extremely quiet. However, even within Tokyo, the Korean quarter stands out and feels different from other districts. In Japan, foreigners may feel isolated because Japanese people rarely initiate conversations with foreigners, while Koreans are often more interested in getting to know them. This can be considered a plus for those who are specifically looking for social interaction. People in Korea are also more relaxed, if I may say so, than in Japan. In Japan, people are more introverted, reserved, and withdrawn. For myself, have also highlighted such a point as queues. Let's talk about queues because the Japanese, it seems to me, were born to stand in them. They somehow calmly accept this reality. Everywhere you go, you encounter huge queues in popular places, such as cafes with animals. It's a separate story because you always have to book in advance. And sometimes, it's not just a day in advance, but a month or even 2 or 3 months. How do you like that? I wanted to make a video, and I don't know how long I need to live in Tokyo to finally remember that everything has to be booked. I was hoping purely on chance that I'd be lucky enough to get into a Pokemon cafe. I went there, of course, thinking I'd just pop in, take a quick look, and maybe take a picture. And, of course, there was a sign with a QR code for making a reservation. You scan it, and it tells you that for the next month and even the following month, everything is fully booked, no seats available. I remember once my daughter and son were crazy about figure skating, and we wanted to book lessons at the rink with a coach. There was one booking window at 10 a.m. We aimed to book once a week and had to make 4 reservations. My sister and I managed to make 2 reservations within 5 minutes, but just 7 minutes later, the entire month was fully booked. You also have to pay the full amount up front, and if you want to reschedule, you can't. The payment is non-refundable. It's the same with the Pokemon Cafe. You have to log in at a specific time on a specific date, reserve your table quickly, literally within 2 to 3 minutes, pay immediately, and only then can you be sure you'll have a spot. Spontaneously deciding, for example, I want to book the Pokemon Cafe today for next month, is impossible. The reservation window is closed. You have to wait, set a reminder, and book quickly at the given time. I'm still not used to it. I'm the kind of person who is very flexible. My family and I can decide spontaneously to go somewhere tomorrow, and our plans might change quickly. But Japanese people plan everything far in advance. When we were in Seoul, everything was much easier. Of course, there are queues, but they are not as long and not in every place. For example, we wanted to visit a sheep cafe, and we were able to walk in without a reservation and got in almost immediately. Of course, there might be lines at popular places, but they are not as extreme as in Tokyo. At the Kangaroo Cafe, we arrived 15 minutes before closing time. Initially, they didn't want to let us in, but we explained that we just wanted a quick visit, and they allowed us in. During our entire trip, there was only one show with food, I don't remember its name now, where I really wanted to go, but there were absolutely no seats. I even tried to buy tickets through a company specializing in ticket purchases. They took my money, then informed me there were no seats, and refunded me. That was the only place where I couldn't get in because I didn't make a reservation in advance. Everywhere else, we managed to visit without any problems. I did see some places with queues, but they weren't long, and you could sit and wait comfortably. So, in terms of queues, Korea is more comfortable and much easier than Tokyo. Of course, people asked me about prices in Japan and Korea. Where is it cheaper? Almost everything in Tokyo is more expensive than in Seoul. For example, renting a 1-bedroom apartment in the center of Tokyo can cost about $1,000, while in Seoul, it's probably around $400 at best. For a 5-kilometer cab ride in Tokyo, you might pay $15-20, whereas in the capital of Korea, it's $5-7, a significant difference. A check for lunch in an ordinary restaurant in Tokyo will cost you about $10-20. In Seoul, prices in restaurants are usually a bit lower, so you can have lunch for about $7-15. So, in terms of prices, Seoul is cheaper to live in than Tokyo. Japan impresses with its attention to detail, strict rules, and traditions, which make it incredibly convenient for living. But South Korea surprises with its dynamism, fast pace of life, and developed pop culture, which has conquered the world. Of course, when it comes to choosing between them, it all depends on your preferences. For those who value comfort, perfect safety, cleanliness, and stability, Japan will undoubtedly be an ideal option. And if you are looking for excitement, an intense atmosphere, and the opportunity to dive into the world of music, dramas, and modern culture, South Korea will not disappoint you. I would be very interested to know your opinion in the comments. Which country would you like to visit more, and where do you think you'd feel more comfortable? What do you think? Write in the comments. Friends, I thank you all very much for watching. Love you all. Kisses. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and see you in new videos. Bye bye.